love Dragons Dogma 2. That's basically what I said in my previous video when I got an early preview of DD2 before release. The thing about that video is that I only received 2 hours of playtime in early access, and what I played was a vertical slice that was very controlled. These vertical slices tend to be polished up for the media so they can make a good first impression, so I always say take what I say with a grain of salt when it comes to previewing these games. Here we are a few weeks later, and I was granted early access to the full game, which has allowed me to prepare a video for when the embargo lifts where I can go a little more into detail about my feelings towards this game. Before we do, quick disclaimer. The following video is not a full review. DD2 is a massive game. I'm gonna be honest, I would take every day one review you see with a grain of salt. I have a hard time believing anyone completed this game unless they just sped run the story. The world is massive and it's full of content, so it was impossible for me to get through everything in a week before release because I have other things to do besides play this game. This video is simply me sharing some first impressions and general info on Dragons Dogma 2. How I feel at this moment could change by the time I make it to the end, so feel free to take what I say with a grain of salt. That being said, here's what you need to know before you install Dragons Dogma 2. Dragons Dogma 2 is the follow-up game to the cult classic Dragons Dogma released back in 2012. It drops March 22nd, 2024 on PC, PS5, and the Xbox Series. Some would describe this as an open-world action-adventure RPG, and it is, but in my opinion, it's so much more. At the time of this recording, I'd say I have about 15 hours on this game, but I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface. That being said, stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be touching on a wide array of topics such as vocations, the pawn system, exploration, and even problems I had with the game. The first thing I want to discuss is this game's character creator. If you love a game that'll let you make whatever you like, then this is going to be the game for you. DD2 lets players start by picking one of the 3 species. This includes humans, elves, and August babies, aka Leos, Rao. And from there, the player is let loose when it comes to the customization. This is one of those games where it allows you to tweak your avatar as little or as much as you like. It has one of those character creators where you get to determine how chiseled your jaw is, you can determine the bridge of your nose, or you can just give yourself a BBL. It's up to you, and it's a lot of fun. There's actually a demo out right now for free on every platform if you want to give it a shot. Once your character is created, the story begins. But I won't be discussing story details here, and that's for 2 reasons. A, I don't want to spoil the game for anyone, and B, I couldn't spoil this game if I wanted to. Reason is, and this leads into my next talking point, Dragons Dogma 2 is massive. If you are in the market for a content-rich single-player adventure, this is the game for you. I have 15 hours on this game. I repeat, 15 hours on this game, and I've done maybe 3 mainline story quests. The main quests I played, they were interesting, but I just kept getting lost in the world of Dragons Dogma 2. And the game makes it easy to get lost in its world because the environment is rich and beautiful. But more importantly, there's always something going on. I may have not indulged much in the story, but I have fought several bosses including Cyclops, Griffins, dragons, and some type of werewolf creature. And that's just the boss fights. You are constantly running into dynamic events where you meet interesting NPCs with their own problems and stories. There's enemy camps with loot sprinkled all throughout the map like Breath of the Wild, underground areas with tough enemies and insane loot like Elden Ring, and the action is just something unique and beautiful about Dragon's Dogma. DD2 features what the game refers to as their vocation system. It's just a fancy term for classes for those unfamiliar with the franchise. At the start of the game, you get to choose one of the 4 classes. This includes the fighter, mage, archer, and thief. The fighter is balanced in offense and defense. The mage is basically support. The thief is a glass cannon with high mobility. And the archer, well, the archer likes to say, "You have failed this city." Jokes aside, that's just vocations on a surface level. Eventually, the player will be given options to more advanced vocations for mastering a class. Think of it as like Destiny 2's subclass system. The magic archer is self-explanatory. The mystic spear hand combines melee with magic. The sorcerer is a powerful battle mage. The trickster is a support class. The wayfarer is a jack of all trades. And the warrior is an ultra instinct brute. And the best part about vocations is you're not tied to any one. If you don't like your class, you can reclassify and you get access to this option fairly early on. So don't be afraid to experiment if you pick up the game. The pawn system is back from the original game and it is better than ever, and I'll explain why in a moment, but first let me explain what the pawn system is for those unaware. The world of Dragon's Dogma has servants in the game known as pawns. They're basically indentured servants slash mercenaries because you have to pay for their services, but their services come with unmatched loyalty. In this game, you play as the Arisen, which is basically the chosen one, whom has the ability to gain the loyalty of any pawn. And because of this status, you're constantly going to be meeting new NPCs in the big city and the open world who are friendly and ready to offer their services. Each pawn has their own personality, fighting style, and goals, and you can have up to 4 people in your party, and their vocations definitely affect your team's success in combat. The cool thing about pawns is they often give advice and they lead you down hidden pathways for loot, and they often have their own missions which involve hunting down some giant monster, which leads to some fire combat and even better loot. Some pawns will be free, some will cost, and some will cost a whole lot. Obviously, the more expensive, the stronger they are. The only thing is that you have to manage your in-game credits because pawns don't level up with you. This means you're gonna have to occasionally swap out pawns, so pro tip, don't overpay in the early game because they won't be with you forever or long for that matter. There's only one pawn in your party that remains loyal throughout your adventure and levels up alongside you. It involves some story beats, so I won't explain why. Instead, I'm gonna shift your focus to why I think your right-hand pawn is one of the best parts about this game. For the people who are upset about this game's lack of co-op, I understand. I think the game would have been cool with it, but a nice consolation prize is this pawn system. Your main right-hand pawn you get to customize like your main character. They also level up alongside you, so you get to build a second character how you see fit. Now, why does this matter? Because although this is a single-player game, it does have online functionality. If you turn online on, that means anyone can recruit your pawn to their party. This includes strangers and friends. The benefit of someone using your pawn in their game is when your pawn returns, you get rewards. But the best part about this online pawn system is that not only can people add your pawn via the friend code system, but if you're online, you will just run into people's pawns in the game as if they were regular NPCs. And this doesn't matter if you're in the town or if you're out exploring in the wilderness. This has led to some of my favorite moments in the game so far. So far, I've run into Kratos from God of War and Lizelle and Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3 because that's what someone made. It's fucking hilarious running around with these 3 on my team. It adds an extra layer of excitement because you never know who you're gonna run into when you're playing the game. Keep in mind, this is just what I ran into a few hours into the game and also only when journalists and content creators had early access. I am excited to see who else I run into when everyone gets their hand on the game. It just adds this silly element to the game that puts a smile on my face, and I love when games do stuff like this because I often feel like games take themselves far too seriously these days. Moving on to combat, fucking fire. I'd argue the gameplay in terms of exploration and combat hard carry this game, and as a gameplay first type of guy, it brings me so much joy to say that. My footage will primarily consist of gameplay from the Thief class, seeing as that's what I'm playing, but I can touch on some general mechanics as well. If I had to explain DD2 to someone who hasn't played the first game, I'd say think of the vast and dangerous open world of Elden Ring meets Monster Hunter meets Game of Thrones. You will be doing a lot of exploring and fighting mythical creatures, some large, some small. The smaller ones tend to move in packs and they don't seem dangerous until they hit you with some type of ailment like poison or sleep. The big ones speak for themselves. This game does not hold your hand. It does not care what level you are, so you better respect the environment because this is one of those games where once you get access to the open world, you can go anywhere you want and you can get fucked up pretty quickly being in an area where you're not supposed to be with the higher level enemies. For my time exploring, I've already been fucked up by a dragon and a griffin, and these fights, by the way, they're epic because the larger creatures can be climbed on, which can lead to some major damage if you position yourself for headshots. It also just creates epic moments. Like I remember stabbing a griffin in the back, it took off into the air and then it launched me and flung me far away. Just one thing you should know is that this climbing feature, although unique, it is a high risk, high reward type situation. And that's because not only can you take major damage if caught in the wrong position, but you can also be left assed out. Climbing drains your stamina and it drains it quickly, which is another topic I want to touch on briefly. I wasn't sure how the stamina worked in my original preview video, and I stated that stamina didn't seem to matter, and that's because when we played during early access, we only got 2 hours with the game. It was very controlled. They wouldn't even let us see any of like the menus or the abilities. So I would like to take the time to correct myself and say that stamina does matter. That build that they had us on at the preview event, I'm pretty sure they had us plan on either maxed out or near maxed out builds because the stamina bar was not moving versus what I've been playing. With the full release and more time on the game, I can confidently say you will have to manage your stamina bar. Stamina drains when you use your special abilities, you climb enemies, or you're just running. Letting yourself get tired will leave you in a stunned state where you're left open to get destroyed by an opponent. Believe it or not, in combat, stamina isn't too much of an issue to manage because it doesn't affect your basic attacks. Only your special moves drain stamina. I found the stamina bar to mostly be annoying outside of combat when you're exploring. And that's because fast travel is very limited in this game, so you're mostly gonna be on foot. Having to constantly catch your breath is very frustrating in this game, especially since I don't believe there's any mounts in this game to get around faster either. And since we're talking about what I don't like about the stamina system, I might as well take the time to allow all of my negatives on the table for y'all.
And here we
going. Keeping things in the realm of exploration, as fun as it is to explore the game, it doesn't change the fact that the lack of mounts in traditional fast travel adds a layer of frustration. One being that there are time quests in this game, something akin to the original Dead Rising. So if you don't get there in time, you're gonna miss the quest. The issue is that this game is so big, it's hard to get where you need to be in time to get something done. The maps are kind of hard to read too, so you're bound to get lost regularly. There's fast travel in this game via the ox cart, but it's very limited. It only works during the daytime and it only follows the main roads, so honestly, it's pretty useless. The lack of fast travel wouldn't be an issue if the missions were properly placed. Often you'll be given a quest that's on the other side of the world, so you have to run to the other side of the world, complete the quest, then run back to the other side of the world, and that could just be too much at times when you're trying to turn in a quest. Sometimes people just want to fast travel and get back to the quest giver and keep it moving. People have lives outside of this game, and I think the option being there doesn't hurt anyone. It's a single player game. I also believe this game's lack of lock-on camera is going to bother some people. It did for me when I first played the game at the preview event, but eventually I did adapt. For the full game, I think picking the thief class helped relieve the camera problem for me because you're constantly moving, so a lock-on camera would probably be annoying and mess up the flow of combat. Now, that's the gameplay. I have some minor issues with the presentation. I believe the writing is solid and the voice acting is strong, but the face models in this game are just not good. Nobody's lips are in sync with what they're saying, and that might break the immersion for some people. Not a big deal for me, but it is noticeable and worth bringing up. What is a big deal for me is the game's performance, which is a big topic of discussion online. For those of you curious, I'm playing on the Xbox Series X, and it's been reported that DD2 runs at an uncapped frame rate on console, but it never hits or maintains 60 FPS. After having some more hands-on time with the game, I'd have to say I think that's an accurate description. This game is very much playable, but at times you will see some frame rate dips. It never felt like it was a slideshow, it was never that bad, but you could see it struggling to maintain 30, especially in the heat of like some big fights. I'm not sure why they didn't provide a performance mode in exchange for downgraded visuals, but I guess it is what it is. I've run a podcast over at youtube.com/GIupdates, and if you're not tapped in, by the way, go ahead and sub. And my co-hosts are both playing on PC as they were given early access so we can discuss it on the podcast, and they stated that it runs fine for the most part, but they did encounter some hiccups, so do with that information that you will if you're looking to pick the game up on PC. But I think the worst thing that I've experienced in my 15 hours is the game locked up on me when I touched one of the pod portals one time. The game straight up stalled for like 30 seconds. I was about to close app and restart, but then the game just started randomly working again. That was very frustrating, but I will say the game works fine 80 to 90% of the time. Hopefully some patches are dropped to clean things up, but if you lost interest because of what I said about the performance, I totally respect that as well. $70 is a lot of money to spend. All I can tell you, the viewer, is that I've been enjoying my time with this game for the most part. I'm confident in saying this will probably be one of the better games to release in 2024, so do what you want with that information. If you want more information on DD2's Mystic Hand and the Magic Archer classes, check out my previous video on Dragons Dogma 2. I got early hands-on time with the game, and Capcom let us try these two classes out that were not featured in this video, so if you've enjoyed this video, I'm sure you're gonna enjoy that one, and you can watch it by clicking the card on the screen.